Hello, my name is William James, and for everyone new here, welcome to the channel, and everyone that's been here for a little while, hi. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about Lord of the Rings. So recently, if you've watched my channel, I talked about the Wheel of Time series. Now, I'm not a great lover of the books. The series made it even worse for me. And that series has made me extremely worried for Lord of the Rings. And there's fears and stuff in my head because Peter Jackson's original Lord of the Rings trilogy is perfect. The extended editions, I'm that person. And The Hobbit, not so good. That leaves a bitter taste. But how are they going to do this? The thing with the Second Age is that as a whole, there isn't much about it. There is the Silmarillion, which covers stories from the First Age, Second Age, and the build-up into the Lord of the Rings. And what I will say about it is, and I love the Silmarillion. I have so many Lord of the Rings books, but it's literally just some pages in the middle. There isn't much. Some stories, a little bit of folklore, and that's it. And I'm worried that they're not going to keep to the lore of Tolkien. And the thing with Tolkien is, and I'm worried there's other stuff, but it's based on European, British predominantly, Irish, Scottish, Welsh mythology mixed with some Norse mythology and some Nordic and Scandinavia and all of that stuff. There's some allegories for Catholicism within this work, and I'm worried they're going to force identity politics and the stunning and brave diversity and representation, which, don't get me wrong, I'm all for it in a natural sense, but this is Lord of the Rings. And I see people justifying this. Well, he never described the physical appearances of the people. Like, yes, he did. If you've not read Lord of the Rings, I don't think these people have read Lord of the Rings when they say that, or they've skimmed it. And the problem with that is, once you start skimming it, there's a lot there to take in. He described them quite intimately, and this is the man that described meals, so there is cooking. There's cooking and jewellery in Lord of the Rings. There is actually a Lord of the Rings cookbook that's very good, by the way. But my concern is they're going to force and shoehorn modern identity politics into the Lord of the Rings, which doesn't need to be there. Yes, Lord of the Rings does go into the issues between races. That is part of the story and part of the narrative. My big concern with this as a whole is that there is a massive amount we don't have on the Second Age. And the problem with that is, as a whole, I hate that phrase, and it gives you room to tell an original story, which is great, and I get that. Or they might I know they're using elements of the Second Age from the Silmarillion, but there isn't much. And they're telling this, I presume it's going to be just an original story, more or less, or a very heavily expanded, and we'll end up with The Hobbit. Please don't do that. I do have worries, and I do have fears because of that. I'm all for telling something, but keeping it in keeping with Tolkien's work, and keeping it in his universe, and keeping it consistent to the cinematic, because I don't know if this is true or not. Apparently it's going to be canon to the films. So, hopefully, that is, but keeping it consistent. Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings built a world that was very much Tolkien on screen. Why do we need to add things that weren't there? I just want to put that into the mix. You know, there are plenty of other properties and things like that. My issues are that once you start shoehorning in modern ideals into fantasy, especially Tolkien, that's very much of its era, you end up bastardization of Tolkien's work, the sort of breakdown of his legacy and the Tolkien Society, and talking about trans allegories and LGBT stuff that isn't there. I'm also worried about sex. To be really blunt about it, sex, and more sex. That they have an intimacy consultant, which is, please don't make this Game of Thrones. Lord of the Rings is not Game of Thrones, and I'm worried that it's going to be a socio-political fantasy that they're telling, like the Game of Thrones. The Game of Thrones is the War of the Nations, political interplay between these different houses and groups, and then sort of an adventure in the middle and different characters, all of this. Lord of the Rings is an adventure. Here is a hobbit, here is a sword, a dragon, an allegory for death at the end. My concerns with Lord of the Rings have grown more and more as I've keep hearing news. And like I said, the Wheel of Time has made me very worried. An absolute shit show of a television series that doesn't know how to tell its story, and I'm worried we're going to end up with that mess. You can throw as much money at Lord of the Rings as you want, but if the writing isn't good, if it isn't true to Tolkien, if it isn't true to his legacy as a writer and the granddaddy of epic fantasy, why the hell are we as Tolkien fans going to watch it? At the end of the day, we want Tolkien. We want his world preserved, we want his legacy preserved, and making something that could literally be a shallow cash-in, or we must have mandates. Here is a woman in every shot. Here is a POC in every shot. We must do this, even if we are tokenizing the representation. Ooh, a gay couple. Yes, we must tokenize them and use them just as tokens. Please stop it. There is a reason Hollywood is failing. There is a reason these series aren't doing well, and people are unwilling to admit it a lot of the time. But yeah, I genuinely hope Lord of the Rings doesn't end up a complete disaster, but we'll see what happens. And like I said, the Wheel of Time just made me more worried than ever. So, tell me what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.